Preparing for revitalization. Welcome. This is a class that is meant to help with the process of internal preparation for revitalization. How does one get started? When we look at revitalization, step one would be prayer. We can't do anything without prayer. So we start this process in prayer, praying to the Lord for wisdom, praying for direction, praying for insight, praying for like-mindedness and unity of spirit within our congregation. Step two is assessment. In order to kind of process, where we want to go, we got to figure out where we are. And we have to begin to make some assessments, begin to survey our people, survey the land, figure out how exactly do we begin to work this process out. Step three is vision. After we've prayed and sought God and sought his face and sought his voice, sought his mission, sought his vision, after we made an assessment of who we are and where we're going, then we begin to shape vision. So many times we start with a vision statement. We start with, let's put together something that sounds nice that we want to do, and then we ask God to bless it. But I'm saying I think we got things backwards. If we're working for God, then I think we need to work with God. And so that starts with God, believe it or not. So we start with prayer, we go to assessment, we go to vision. And then once we look at vision and look at assessment, then we got the process change. That's a difficult step. We could do prayer, we could do assessment, we could come up with vision. But most of the times, step four, change, is when things get tough and when things get stuck. And then ultimately, step five will be empowering the people to do what revitalization actually calls for. And so we're going to walk through this process of internal preparation for revitalization. And I said we start with prayer. So when we start with prayer, I don't just want to say it in general. I want us to look at that. Begin to pray for unified sensitivity to hear God's voice. In Psalm 127:1, it says, unless the Lord builds the house, those that build labor in vain. Okay? And so we're starting bathing it in prayer. We're bathing for a oneness amongst us as a people, as a congregation. When you think about prayer, in Acts 2:1, it says, when the day of Pentecost came, they were all together in one place. Now, they that were all together in one place is not a redundancy. And so I want us to be clear when we hear that. It communicates that they were all on one accord. They weren't just in the same place. They were all waiting for the same thing because the Lord had instructed them to wait. They were all unified, waiting in anticipation for a miracle to take place. And I don't want to skip over this because I truly believe that if we want to witness the power of God in our churches, then there has to be a spirit of unity and a spirit of expectancy. Okay, and so we got to decide that we want this. We got to decide that we're going to pray for this. That we're going to spend some quality time in prayer. Some unified corporate prayer, seeking the face of God. And we're going to have an expectancy, as they did at the day of Pentecost, that God's going to answer, that God's going to move, that God's going to give us vision, that God's going to give us direction. So when we talk about being guided by the Holy Spirit, the first thing we need to commit to doing is seeing things the way our God sees them. And that's through prayer. And so I can't emphasize it enough. I think prayer is becoming a lost discipline in our churches. We are feel that we're too busy to pray. And ultimately, we need to realize that we can get so much more accomplished on our knees than we ever could on our feet. And so seeking the face of God is so important to this process. It's easy to quote prayer. It's easy for us to say, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not to your own understanding. Acknowledge him in all your ways and he will make your path straight. It's easy to say it. It's harder to do it, right? It's easy to quote it. But the truth is, in order to see things the way God sees them, we have to trust God more than we trust ourselves, more than we trust our abilities, more than we trust our training, more than we trust our charisma, our people skills, whatever giftedness we have. We got to learn to trust God more than that. Because I find that we rely on our ability to convince, to persuade. We rely on our ability to recruit. We rely on our ability to reach out. Let's figure out how to articulate certain things when in reality, we got to remember, we plant, we water. God gives the increase. And so ultimately, we got to rely on God and God's power and God's ability for revitalization. And so I want to move on to that next step. So that's prayer. I want to move on to assessment.